Hello and welcome to the Week 14 edition of the Survivor Podcast here on the lines. Matt Brown, Steven Anderson. You guys said, hey, let's do one more week of this thing. And me and Steven chatted it over. And you know what? Damn it, let's do one more week of this thing here. Now I can really say this. If you're watching this and you're still in, holy cow.
Hat tip.
Good on you, because you survived a very, listen, I get it. We still play the games. These are all still professional athletes. I get all this stuff like that, but you survived a very unfortunate week for Steelers and Jaguars backers. You didn't think you were going to have to go to battle with Mitch Trubisky and CJ Beathard. And unfortunately, you had to go to battle with Mitch Trubisky and CJ Beathard to try to keep you alive in your survivor pool. And that did not end up going your way. Even weirder in that Steelers game, 2 delays and like all the stuff, like it just never felt like they were going to be able to come back in that game at all, Steven. And so here we sit, and the survivor pools have just been annihilated at this point. Over, like as we've mentioned, 9,267 entries over at Circa, 30 remain. 30 remain at this point out of 9,267. And honestly, in any pool that anybody else is in after this week, you just got destroyed as well.
Just wild stuff. And I also want to thank everybody who went into the comments and let us know they wanted another week. We are back by popular demand, so we appreciate that. And yeah, I think, as you've mentioned in previous weeks, Matt, if somehow you are still alive, it's the end game now, and it's not time to get cute.
Yeah. Especially now, because you made it through. So there were a lot of people that played the Steelers this past week, because they were trying to hold on to whatever team that they thought that they needed to hold on to in order to use in future weeks. If you were able to make it through this past week, you are probably sitting really, really good in your pool, because the other people that would have survived along the way probably had to use the good teams along the way. I mean, like, I was looking at some of the entries that are available still over at Circa, Steven, and like, look, they're still alive. The equity in their ticket is worth $300K now and whatever and all that. However, they ain't got no good teams left. Like, I mean, like, it is going to be like, it's going to be a sweat every single week, from here on out, because they're going to be playing, 2-point favorites and stuff, like moving forward. Like, you're going to be playing a bunch of toss-up games. And so it's probably likely the same thing in your survivor pool, unless you kind of got into one of these rebuy pools. And so we'll give you the full landscape of kind of our pecking order of how to play it, because if you did kind of rebuy back in mid-season, you might still have some good teams left. But we'll go from there. And Steven, as we take a look here, as we do each and every week, we'll talk about the big favorites, and we can start on Thursday night. If you trust the Steelers and Mitch Trubisky, they are in fact 6-point favorites over the New England Patriots, who have looked like the absolute worst team in the NFL over the last month. And so you do have an option with that. The Saints are 5.5 point favorites. Doesn't matter if it's Jameis Winston or Carr. They're playing the worst team in the NFL, and the Panthers. Panthers have been gifted the opportunity to win a game the last couple of weeks, Steven, have not been able to do it. And so here we sit 5.5 with the Saints. Ravens are 7.5 over the Rams in a potential weather game. Guys, weather week finally here. So you need to go in and take a look at what's going on in the north, kind of Midwest, Northeast this week, because all of those games are going to be affected at least a little bit by weather. The Texans are anywhere from 4.5 to 5-point favorites over the Jets. The Niners, 10.5 over the Seahawks at home in that game. The Packers, 6.5 on the road over the Giants. And then the Dolphins are big 13-point favorites over the Titans. Again, you probably have used the Dolphins already if you've been playing season, like if this is all the way season long. If you are not, if you bought back in mid-season, it is Dolphins like with a bullet, right? I mean, it's Dolphins with a bullet, not even a question. You're playing the Dolphins, you're moving on, you're feeling happy about it, no big deal. But Steven, if this is season long, you probably don't have the Dolphins left, and you're going to have to make some difficult decisions this week.
Absolutely. I think that's a great starting point just for the people that have a lot of options available still. The two teams with the highest win probabilities, if you convert money line to that implied probability. The Dolphins against Tennessee and the 49ers against Seattle this week. I think they're both fine plays. Obviously, I'd feel a little better about Miami against Tennessee. From that point, the next team is the Baltimore Ravens hosting the LA Rams. And I'll tell everybody, I've already bet on the Rams plus 7.5 in this game. And it wouldn't shock me in the least if they pull the upset here, because the Ravens are dealing with a passing offense that doesn't have Mark Andrews now. Certainly understand that they have the rest advantage here, but from a survivor perspective, this is a Ravens offense that has been relying heavily on running the ball. This has not been the new look offense with their new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, that was promised. They are overly reliant on being efficient in the running game, and they are middle of the pack passing the ball. So that, to me, when you shorten the game, longer drives, you're going to increase the opportunity for something to go screwy, turnovers to matter more. And the Rams have looked good since Kyron Williams came back. So despite the fact that they are the third most likely team to win by implied probability, I'm not all that comfortable with the Ravens this week, Matt.
Yeah, I'm on the opposite side of you in that one. That game is going to be a mess. I don't think the Rams are going to be able to pass the ball at all. It is like horrible torrential rain that's going to be going through Baltimore either during the game or before. And if it's before, it means the field's going to be a complete mess as well. We're talking 20-mile-an-hour sustained winds, gusts into the 30s. Puka Nacua got beat up, was in and out of the lineup for the Rams. I don't think they're going to have any success at all through the air. And so I actually think the Ravens are built pretty good to kind of win a slop fest against the Rams. So I'm on the other side of you there on that one. The other thing to keep into consideration this week, guys, is just like, you got to play an ugly team somewhere along the way. And for me, I think it's the Saints this week. And I understand that Jameis Winston brings a lot of variance to the game, right? Because Jameis Winston sometimes will throw it to the other team in the most inexplicable of ways. But the Panthers have proven to me, Steven, that especially over the last 2 weeks, the other teams tried to let them win. The Bucks tried to let them win. The Titans tried to let them win. And they just do not have the personnel or the scheme or whatever it may be to get it done. And I would argue that the Saints, even with Jameis at quarterback, is a more talented team top to bottom than the Bucks, is a more talented team top to bottom than the Titans. Certainly the Bucks defense was completely ravaged last week. I mean, 5 starters not playing on that Bucks defense last week, and the Panthers couldn't get the win. If there is a hold your nose, play a bad team because I don't have any of the good teams left, it would be the Saints for me this week.
I certainly would say I'd be more comfortable taking the Saints this week over the over the Pittsburgh Steelers against the New England Patriots on Thursday night, because as putrid as the Patriots offense has been, and it is the worst since the Chicago Cardinals in the 1930s over the past 3 weeks, the defense is still really good. They have not quit, and they continue to play really strong, and the metrics bear that out. And they get Mitch Trubisky this week. So turnovers could screw you in this game. You just never know. So despite the fact they're a 6-point favorite, I'm queasy putting, this much equity on the line at this point in Survivor on Mitch Trubisky against a very solid defense. So I think given the option of those two, I would go with the New Orleans Saints, but the most popular pick this week projection-wise is the Green Bay Packers, Matt, and that makes a lot of sense to me because nobody really had the appetite to play them for most of the season. They were underachieving, but now they look really good. Makes sense they'll be the most popular after the win against the Kansas City Chiefs, but I'm not caring nearly as much this week about who's the most popular because I'm just trying to get to the finish line. At least my humble opinion. Others might disagree in terms of game theory, but my game theory strategy I've talked about all year kind of changes when we get to this point where I'm just trying to be one of the guys at the end. And Tommy DeVito, if you look at the advanced metrics, has been right next to guys like Tim Boyle and Bryce Young since he took over as starting quarterback. And by success rate, the Giants are one of the bottom 5 defenses in the NFL. Meanwhile, Jordan Love has been a top 10 quarterback over the past month. So I'd be very comfortable taking the Packers at this point, and I think a lot of our viewers and listeners are still going to have them available.
Yeah, it is. I guess for me, what it comes down to is, do I want a home team or do I want a road team? Because I'm honestly kind of like coin tossy there on the Packers or the Saints. And I get the fact that I guess our question becomes this, Steven, and who knows? Like the answer might just be there isn't one. Who's worse, the Giants or Carolina at this point, as far as like what if we're picking on the worst team in the NFL, who do we think is the worst team in the NFL? Like I said, there might not be an answer to this because they might just basically be like equal in our eyes, right?
I think I'll say this. I think both of the offenses between the Giants and Carolina are bad enough where it probably doesn't matter. And if things are gonna, if we're talking tail end outcomes now, but if things are gonna get screwy, I would think the Panthers defense has a bigger chance of making things a little screwy here against a volatile Jameis Winston than the Giants defense of doing much of anything at this point. And especially now that the Packers offensive line has been fortified a little bit here, you don't have to worry as much about Kayvon Thibodeau and company getting a pass rush for the Giants. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it, just comparing the two. I don't know if you agree or not.
Well, so here's, we'd like to talk game theory here on this program as well. And so let's just talk financial theory as opposed to actual game theory here. The Packers play on Monday night. So you will have all of the information prior to that if you end up playing the Packers.
Great call. Yeah.
So you might know whether the chalk won out on Sunday or if there were some massive upsets along the way on Sunday, and you'll know your position in your pool a little bit better come Monday night. And so you, from a financial aspect, if you notice that, oh, wow, another 15 people got knocked out on Sunday heading into Monday night, that's when you can start hedging against your entry. Like you can then at that point start betting on the other side of your play, and you can just bet the Giants on the money line, and you are looking at a big payday, by the way. Like if you're sitting here and the Giants on the money line sitting, 2.5 to 1, a little over 2.5 to 1, 245, 250, 260. I see a 260 out there right now. And that is a way that you can basically, make yourself feel a lot better about your pick too, just because you are able to financially gain if you were to get upset, or if you don't get upset, you don't really care because you're moving on to the next week anyway to move towards that payday at the end of the line. So having more information for poker players out there, it's like, this is basically like taking a team, like being on the button, right? Like now everyone has to act in front of you and you have the most amount of information. That's kind of how it is if you play the Packers in Survivor this week, because all the other games, although there are 2 Monday night games this week, but the other one is the Dolphins as 13-point favorites, which we said, if you got the Dolphins, you just play the Dolphins. But like that we're assuming you don't have the Dolphins because there was like 9 other chances to play the Dolphins this year. So you have basically every other game already in the can in front of you. And so you have the most amount of information. And Steven, look, at the end of the day, the reason you're trying to win this thing is to make money. So this is another way you can go about making money, is by looking at it from that standpoint.
The other factor here too, for me, Matt, is the Packers' future schedule. And the only other place I would be willing to play them is week 16 when they face the Carolina Panthers on the road. But that particular week 16, there's so many other good options. If you save the Eagles, they get the Giants. If you save the Chiefs, they get the Raiders. The Broncos get New England that week, which is a surprise little nice spot if you want to use them there. So there's 3 other really good options there for week 16 before I'd probably consider using the Packers versus what I'm looking at this week if I'm trying to use somebody a little bit further down the board. So that's the other factor for me with Green Bay.
And the other thing with that, guys, despite the fact that, I just talked about all the weather and all stuff like that, so apparently by Monday that will have moved through and be gone. And so even though that is a Packers, Giants, Northeast game, apparently by that point the weather will have moved out of the area. So, because we know that's the other thing that at least in we're just trying to give you all angles here, guys, with everything. So the one thing about playing the Saints, it's a dome, it's a controlled environment. You are not having to worry about, crazy winds or what, all the stuff like that can make games get really screwy. Right. And so there is at least that. But from everything and we're recording this on Wednesday morning, everything that all these guys that do this for a living are saying is that it will have cleared out by then. It should be fine conditions for that Green Bay New York Giant game. So we shouldn't have any concern there from a weather standpoint with everything. So Steven, for me, I think it's like let's give the boilerplate here, which is, hey, if you have the Dolphins or the 49ers, I don't see a reason not to play them this week because, again, your pool is probably down to just a handful of people, right? Obviously, if you're in Circa, there's other considerations. It's a standalone Christmas week. San Francisco plays on Christmas. There's, if you don't have anybody else, you obviously need to hold on to them for that. So like that's other considerations for different contests that you're in. But if you're in just a normal one and you've got Miami, if you've got, San Francisco, I don't see any reason not to, because you can kind of toggle which one you play which week. I mean, Miami gets the Jets next week, and then San Francisco gets Arizona next week as well. So you can you have your next 2 weeks kind of planned out if you've got both of those teams left.
Yeah, I agree with that. So like the top 3 I would give this week, I'm not going to include Miami or San Francisco because we've already talked about that caveat. So for me, number 1 is the Green Bay Packers against Tommy. I live with my mom, DeVito, and the New York Giants. Number 2, I'm actually going to go with the Houston Texans on the road against the Jets and Zach Wilson coming back into town. I'm going to stay a little gun shy away from the Baltimore Ravens. Certainly hear your points about the weather, and if the weather looks really that bad on game day or the day before and you guys want to ask some questions in the comments, be sure to do that, and I'd be happy to reply. And I guess, I'm just not comfortable putting the Steelers in my top 3 against this defense and Mitch Trubisky starting. There's one last team I just want to mention that I'm not considering because I think people might ask. They're going to see the Detroit Lions and their high-powered offense going against the Chicago Bears this week and wondering, hey, why not choose them? I'm out because Jared Goff over his career has been much more susceptible to turnovers outdoors. It looks like another cold, windy game in Chicago. And if you look at the statistics over the past 6 weeks, the Detroit Lions defense is a problem. They are terrible on defense, among the bottom 5 in the league. And they've also had their defensive coordinator on record in recent months talking about how much they struggle against mobile quarterbacks. And they were down 12 points in the fourth quarter in Detroit in the first matchup between these two teams where Justin Fields had over 100 yards rushing. So no on the Detroit Lions this week.
Yeah, I am my top 3. Like I said, look, it's Miami, San Francisco for the next 2 weeks. If you happen to have them, you have layups both weeks. So I'm not going to really include those guys because you probably don't have them left. But if you do, that'd be the top 2 for sure. But for me, number 1 would still be Green Bay. Like I said, it does not look like weather is going to be a concern. I don't want wonkiness, and so that's the only thing that would get me a little off of that one. And now if the weather forecast does change and it looks like it's going to be kind of sloppy and nasty, that's when bad teams can win. Like bad teams can sneakily win when there are conditions that teams can't prepare for. And like if a field is sloppy and we've already heard about the conditions of that stadium anyway, right? Steven, that's the other thing. Like we've already heard they hate how this turf holds up as it is anyway. So much less if it's like a soaker or something, right? So just, again, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the concern as of this recording. So mine would be Packers. Second would be Saints. Third, a very, 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 very distant third would be the Steelers. But I would avoid at all cost playing the Steelers. There is so much variance in a game in which the total is literally sitting at 30. I mean, like we're talking about a winning score could be 13-7, 10-6, whatever. And like, it's just something like that. And we have enough of a sample size of Mitch Trubisky to know he will turn the ball over at least once in this game. Now, is that going to be enough to turn the tides? I don't really know. But he will turn the ball over once in this game. Like that is going to happen. And so hopefully that isn't enough to sink you and bury you in Survivor. So a very, very distant third would be the Steelers. But hey, that might be your only option at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it makes sense. We're basically in lockstep here, just changing order a little bit here and there. So I think we've given everybody a decent shot here. Certainly a better shot than we gave ourselves. That's for sure at this point.
That is no joke, my friend. I mean, next year So it's 3 years in a row. I've bonked off all my entries because I do that. I'm playing the same team with every entry, like whatever, And so maybe next year my strategy changes. Maybe in Circa I go 5-5 or something, and like just try to move 5 through along at the same time, because the putting all 10 on one did not work out this year. That was a fun week. That was a fun week 3. Let me tell you how fun that week was. That was super fun with everything. But guys, look, we really do appreciate all the support here. Listen, if this week doesn't get wacky, we might be back next week. And we can kind of talk through some options and things like that. But if this gets down to where there's, sub 1% left in all of the pools out there, then this might be our last one. So,
and if we're not back and you still need help, go down in the description on YouTube. Click on the Pool Genius link, get a free 3-day trial. If you're listening on the audio side, go over to the YouTube side and find that link in the description, because they will give you fantastic help the rest of the way if we are not back.
And also, upper right-hand corner of thelions.com, that is the Discord. Absolutely free to do the Discord as well, and there's always football talk going on. So just get in the channel, and there are always people who are willing to talk shop in there, so be sure and take advantage of that as well. If you haven't done it already, we got over 40,000 subscribers to this channel. If we can get to 50,000 by the Super Bowl, we are going to do a giveaway, and it is going to be exclusive to the 50,000 people that have subscribed to this channel. So be sure and go ahead, hit the subscribe button. I know it's a tight time frame. We can get there with your support and your help. Let's get to 50,000 by the Super Bowl. So we do appreciate that a ton as well. So hit that subscribe button. Everything we do at the Lions, absolutely free. For Steven, I'm Matt. Good luck in your Week 14 Survivor pick.